On the surface, they were just houses, rows of quiet, unassuming homes on the edge of Birmingham. To a passing eye, they looked completely ordinary, a picture of suburban calm and routine. But behind the walls of these seemingly innocent properties, a secret network thrived. This was not an isolated crime. It was a network built on shadows, a fortune worth millions scattered across streets that seemed untouched by crime. Every address was linked by one thread, money that could never be traced back. For years, this empire grew in silence, until one day the entire facade came crashing down. This is the story of a Pakistani gang who turned drug money into a £17 million property empire, and the meticulous investigation that brought it all to an end. The scale of this operation was breathtaking. It was a sprawling network, not just a handful of houses, but 59 properties spread across the Midlands and stretching all the way to Bangor, a small seaside town in Northern Ireland. Each property was a puzzle piece, carefully registered under different names, family members, trusted associates, a strategy designed to outlast any investigation. But what fueled this vast empire? The properties themselves were varied. The gang purchased 34 student houses, several industrial units, and even a public gym known as Rampage Fitness. In some areas, they went as far as buying up entire roads, 5 or 6 houses on single streets. The method was simple yet brilliant. Every brick, every mortgage payment came from the profits of heroin smuggled into the UK. What looked like legitimate student housing and family homes were, in fact, the foundations of one of the most lucrative money laundering operations in the Midlands. The gang didn't just deal in drugs, they operated like businessmen. At the heart of this empire stood Aurangzeb Khan, a figure already known to law enforcement. Alongside his close associates, Muhammad Ali and Sajid Hussain, Khan operated quietly in East Birmingham. They were not the type to flaunt their wealth. Instead, they built connections to suppliers in Pakistan and networks that could move both drugs and money without leaving obvious traces. The gang's roots were deep in the heroin trade. They operated with the logistics of a major corporation, using fake companies, forged paperwork, and overseas contacts. When heroin was cut and prepared for street sale, every kilo turned into hundreds of thousands of pounds. The group needed a way to clean this money, to turn illegal cash into assets that couldn't be seized easily. Property became their chosen cover, offering stability and the appearance of legitimate earnings through rental income. As their wealth grew, the gang expanded their inner circle. Muhammad Ashraf Khan handled logistics, while Rajesh Patel provided the paperwork that gave shipments a veneer of legitimacy. On the ground, men like Omar Isa and Imran Arif delivered and received goods, never touching the larger financial web. By 2014, this network was well established, with layers of protection shielding its leaders. Their confidence grew when one of their biggest shipments arrived. The group organized 2 container shipments, both originating from Lahore, Pakistan, and routed through Karachi. Each container carried heavy industrial machinery, specifically metal lathes, chosen because they were difficult to inspect without specialist equipment. Hidden inside the machinery were compressed packages of heroin. In February 2014, the first container slipped through undetected. The heroin was concealed so well that even trained officers might have missed it. This single load, when cut and distributed, could have been worth millions. But the gang, emboldened by their success, wasn't satisfied. They quickly moved to arrange a second, larger shipment, believing their methods were foolproof. But what they didn't know was that their downfall had already begun years earlier. The beginning of the end for this empire started quietly, back in December 2011. The Police Service of Northern Ireland flagged suspicious property activity to the National Crime Agency, NCA. Red flags were raised by several properties in Bangor, owned by individuals with little to no legitimate income. This was the first thread that investigators would pull. The NCA launched its first civil recovery investigation, a strategy focused on tracing the source of the funds, not just the people. It didn't take long for investigators to notice connections to a cluster of properties in East Birmingham. They began comparing declared incomes with the value of the assets. One case stood out: an individual earning £20,000 a year, but holding multiple properties worth over £1 million combined. As Andy Lewis, the head of the NCA's asset denial team, would later explain, findings like these start the hairs running. From that point forward, the NCA shifted its strategy. They decided to focus on the properties themselves, using civil recovery powers under the Proceeds of Crime Act. This allowed them to seize assets even if the criminal network tried to remain in the shadows. By 2012, they had mapped out a growing list of suspicious property acquisitions, all linked to the same group. They didn't yet have proof of drug trafficking, but the financial patterns were impossible to ignore. Each purchase, each unexplained transfer of funds, became another thread for them to pull. The trap was set. Now, back to 2014. Confident in their methods, the gang orchestrated their second, larger shipment. The container carried the same heavy industrial lathes. But this time, Border Force officers grew suspicious. Routine checks revealed anomalies in the weight and construction of the machinery. When they were cut open, officers discovered a staggering 165 kilograms of heroin, with an estimated street value of £19 million. This single load, if diluted, could have produced up to 2 million street deals. But instead of seizing the drugs, the NCA and Border Force reassembled the machinery and allowed the container to continue its journey. It was a high-risk move, but it was designed to expose everyone involved in the conspiracy. Surveillance teams trailed the cargo to an industrial unit in Sandwell, West Midlands, where cameras and audio equipment were already in place. They were ready to capture the handover. Soon, Omar Issa and Imran Arif, two trusted members of the network, arrived to receive the delivery. Unaware they were being watched, they began unloading the lathes, believing they were moving untouched heroin worth millions. Every movement, every exchange was recorded, providing the evidence investigators had been waiting for. This was the missing piece. The sting didn't just catch the men at the bottom, it was the thread that would unravel the entire organization. With the evidence from the Sandwell sting, the NCA now had the missing link. Direct proof that the cash flow into the property empire was tied to heroin trafficking. They launched a parallel criminal investigation, meticulously examining bank accounts, property deeds, and company records. As they had discovered before, the discrepancies were staggering. People on modest wages were linked to properties worth millions. The NCA dug deeper into the shell companies and front businesses. One example was the Taj Tandoori restaurant in Bangor, tied to Khan's family. Investigators alleged it was a cash funnel, used to launder significant sums before the funds were channeled into Birmingham property deals. Undercover surveillance continued throughout 2015 and 2016. Phone records, shipping documents, and financial trails all pointed back to Amiran Zeb Khan as the ringleader. By early 2017, arrest warrants were prepared. In coordinated raids across Birmingham and the West Midlands, NCA teams and local police swooped on the network. Khan was arrested at his Cobb Road address. Ali was taken from his home on Windcliffe Road, while Hussein was picked up at Fieldhouse Road. Other associates, including Isa, Arif, Ashaf Khan, Rajesh Patel, and Zulfgar Munsaf, were also detained. By mid-2017, the gang stood charged with conspiracy to import heroin and money laundering. In July 2017, at Birmingham Crown Court, the prosecution laid out the story piece by piece linking the sprawling £17 million property empire to the proceeds of a highly organized heroin trafficking operation. Jurors were shown all the evidence from the container sting, the surveillance footage, and the detailed financial records. Sentencing began with the ringleaders. Umayyan Zeb Khan, 38, received 22 years in prison for his central role. Muhammad Ali, 36, also received 22 years as a key organizer. Sajid Hussain, 32, was sentenced to 22 years for overseeing the import routes. Their associates also received lengthy sentences. Muhammad Ashraf Khan, 49, was handed 17.5 years for managing logistics. Rajesh Patel, 52, who provided the paperwork, was jailed for 15.5 years. Omar Issa, 36, and Imran Arif, 35, who assisted in receiving the shipment, were sentenced to 15.5 and 10 years, respectively. The case was a stark reminder of how organized crime can embed itself into the fabric of everyday life. The empire of bricks and mortar, built on the suffering of countless lives, was dismantled. The properties were seized under the Proceeds of Crime Act, a powerful tool used by the NCA to strip criminals of their ill-gotten gains. The case of the Ghost Empire became one of the NCA's longest-running asset recovery cases, a testament to the patient and meticulous work of investigators who refused to give up. It showed that even the most carefully constructed criminal networks, designed to outlast any investigation, could not stand forever. So what do you think? Were the sentences handed down to the gang a just punishment for their crimes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more real UK crime stories like this, make sure to subscribe and stay tuned. There's always another case waiting to be uncovered.